Yeah, Sangeeta ma'am, you can start please.
Yes, ma'am. So can I start now?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of teaching fraternity and my dear student participants. Myself, Professor Sangeeta Jagya. On behalf of Career Guidance and Placement Cell, I would like to welcome our Principal Ma'am, Dr. Geeta Menon, Vice Principal, Professor Sunil Khatri, Convener, Professor Neelam Kapoor, Co-Convener, Dr. Neelam Mulchandani, today's speaker, Mr. Kunal Dole, all the teachers and participants to this webinar on career in music production organized by Seva Sadans R.K.Talreja College. So, what is music? Music is an art. Music is life itself. Music is also a form of entertainment. Music is the universal language of mankind. As music is inseparable part of our life, so there are various career options in music production, like audio director, music editor, sound engineer, and many more. So to know about career in music production in detail, we have with us Mr. Kunal Dole. I would now like to give a brief introduction about our eminent speaker, Mr. Kunal Dole. Mr. Kunal Dole has done certificate course in music production and in sound engineering from TSM and diploma in music production from BIMM, London, having intimate knowledge of the process of recording sound microphone placement, mixing audio for music, also having some knowledge of Foley, SFX, ADR, music for games using F Mode Studio, Midi transformation techniques. And now the moment for which we are all waiting for. The floor is open for our speaker, Mr. Kunal Dole. But before that, few announcements. All participants are requested to post their queries in chat box. The speaker will address all the questions at the end of the session, and all participants have to fill compulsorily feedback form. Link of the same will be shared in the chat box towards the end of the session. Now over to Mr. Kunal Dole.
Thank you, Professor Jagya. Um, Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I would first like to thank the principal, Dr. Geeta Menon, the vice principal, Mr. Sunil Khatri, and the convener, Professor Neelam Kapoor, and all the members of the staff and all the students for making it today and sitting for this session quite close to lunch hour, I might say. So let me just quickly start off. I'm going to be talking about careers in music rather than music itself today, because I think that is a very important aspect of it. Not just making music, but how to market it.
Excuse me, Kunal.
So let me just quickly
Excuse me,
start
Kunal.
off. Yes,
I could hear two voices.
I'm going to be talking about. Okay, you're hearing two voices. Let me put headphones on and let's try that. Is this better now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, because many people, when they enter the music industry, they are more focused on making something, but they don't necessarily pay attention to how to market it properly or how to sell it properly. There are many people out there who are amazingly creative, but they do not know how to market themselves, and hence they can get disillusioned with the industry, and they might even leave the industry. So I would like to focus more on that today. Anyway, uh, let's get a move on. Now, why is music important? Now, you might think that music is just a form of entertainment, Like you listen to a song, you dance to a song or something like that. But music is so much more than that. You know, it is required in literally everything. It provides context to our lives, which is why you see, get a move on. Why is
Once again,
music
sorry, Kunal.
important? Now,
So,
you might
yeah,
think that music
still I could
is
hear
just
two voices.
yeah, I can hear it also. It's coming back from
I
Yeah.
think, Kunal, mute your PC or laptop. Mute your PC or laptop.
sharing.
Yeah, it will be okay.
Mute my laptop, but ma'am, I'm on headphones. How do I
Now,
mute?
then it
Yeah.
is okay. Only
Kunal,
one.
Kunal, problem is solved. You can start. Problem is solved.
Okay. Was it feeding back from somewhere?
No,
Yeah, there was some
two,
problems. You
two
can continue.
devices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, music is used in a lot of places where you might not expect, you know, and you might not even notice it. You know, like sometimes it is used in greeting cards, or it is used in some reverse cameras and everything. So every little bit, every little device in your life requires some sort of music. And there are a lot of small jobs in the market which you can do, and these jobs keep on getting you a lot of money out of royalties, because a lot of people use what you have made, and you get a portion of that every time they use it, every time they buy a device which is your music. So it is present everywhere because it provides context to what is happening. You know, appropriate music is required for conveying emotions to an audience. It sort of reinforces the point. uh, if you have a scene going on the television, the change in music, or what music is playing behind that scene, can determine what that situation is. For the same scene, if you use different kinds of music, you can have a different kind of feeling being conveyed through that scene. It also provides foreshadowing. It provides cues for various events which happens in like entertainment units. You know, like for example, in a game, when you are near an enemy, when you have to enter combat, the music suddenly changes, so the player knows that he should be looking for you know uh, some enemies out there, or if there is a collectible somewhere, you know, a special music will play, and the player is aware that they have to look for something over here. So in many such situations, you know, music is important. And so first thing, before you get into the music industry, you have to determine what sort of a musician you are, what you want to do in the industry. Do you want to sing? Do you want to write lyrics? Do you want to play an instrument? Or do you want to be a producer, and you want to put a lot of different ideas in one place, and you want to become an arranger? You have to understand that in today's world, it is impossible to stick to one thing and hope to make a living out of it. You have to do two or three things together. For example, you can be a good guitarist, but on the side, you might have to do certain production work, or you might want to do some composing for someone, or you want to be a transcriber. If someone has written that music, if they want it written or down to on a music sheet, you know, maybe you're good at listening to it and then writing it down. These are certain small jobs which you can do to make some extra money out of it, you know. So you should be aware of what you want to do and what you're good at doing. You shouldn't force yourself, because this is a creative field. and forcing it does not give a product which is 100% out there. It doesn't give you the quality which you want. So that's the first thing you should be looking at. What do you want to do with music? That boils down to what do you actually like about music. When you listen to a song, what do you listen to most intently? Do you listen to the voice or do you listen to a particular instrument? From that, if you look at uh, what you like, then you have some idea of what you might want to do with it. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily that thing will work out. You might start something and then you might realize that you're good at something else. Like how it happened with me was like I started learning, going to DSM for learning guitar. But I found out that my aptitude lies with sound engineering, and I'm really good at that. And so after finishing my guitar course, I switched over to sound engineering and production, and then continued with that. And then I went to London for 3 years and did my diploma over there. So these switches might happen. Sometimes you might even get bored of doing one thing, and you might want to try something new. So that is also possible. So firstly, you need to determine what you want to do with it. Then you need to learn the very basics of music because you can't, not everyone is born with an innate ability to create music or to understand music. So if you need to have certain basic training. So music has three components as shown on the screen. Melody is a set of notes which is played in a particular order at a particular time. So whatever vocals you might be singing, you might remember what is fixed in your head. That is all a melody. Harmony are the notes which are played along with the melody. They give context and emotion to the melody. These are the chord progressions which play in the song. These are often repetitive and playing the harmony is a very important job, but which is often overlooked by the audience. But you might even be working behind the scenes, but you might be making just as much money as the person who's the face of the song. So it is very important to not discount the less glamorous jobs in the industry. And then rhythm is your drum beat, your pulse at which the music is playing. It determines the speed of the music and whether it also determines whether you can dance to it or whether it's more of a workout sort of a music or whether it's romantic music. So romantic music will typically be slower and it will be in a time signature called 3/4, which is a part of rhythm. So this basically provides a time scale for everything else. Uh, you might it might be beneficial to you to learn how to read and write sheet music. Not a lot of people can do it these days, and if you have that skill, it is a very lucrative extra. Um, Sheet music is required by every major professional songwriter, and they might even hire you to write it down, write their own compositions down because they don't know how to read or write music, and you do, and they can just play it back to you, and you can write it down for them. So this is another job you can have in the industry. Now, apart from having skill, you also need to know how to behave in the music industry. Um, Firstly, you need to be humble and you need to be professional. You need to be easy to work with. You need to provide. You need to submit your work on time. You shouldn't be cross talking. You shouldn't be telling stories about one musician to another musician. because it is a very competitive industry. It is a very unorganized industry, and the people in this industry talk to each other, and you don't want to be the topic of that conversation. You don't want to get blacklisted later on. So it is very important to have the right kind of behavior and attitude in this industry. You don't want to be pursued as a threat or a competition, but at the same time, you also need to be easy to work with. Uh, this industry works a lot on word of mouth and on networking. So you need to maintain a good relationship with other members of the industry. It is almost as important as practicing your instrument or practicing your craft. And this is something which not a lot of people outside know, but this is how it works in the music industry. And you need to be a decent person to work with. Uh, People will often work with people who are not as skilled, but who submit their work on time to get just finish the project. Because you need to understand one thing: the audience does not have the same view of that piece as the composers or the insiders have. The audience does not know what is going on in the mind of the composer. The audience does not know what the composition is. They only know what they're hearing. So even if everything does not go into the song, because the people hired to do that are a little less skilled, the audience does not know that. They think that what is coming out is the entire piece of music. So it is important to finish it on time and get it out there rather than sit and work on every little imperfection, which is again, it is a subjective thing, because one person's perfect might be another person's imperfect. So you can't keep running around in circles over here. So it is very important that you finish your tasks on time, and you submit your work to whoever has hired you to do that on time. It is very important to maintain your reputation. Okay. So what are the different types of jobs which are there in the music industry? What are the different avenues available for a budding musician? So there are two broad categories: creative people and technical people. Now, creative people are your people who write songs, who compose pieces, who make melodies. They're always, or who play an instrument. Uh, they're always thinking about new ideas. They're coming up. They're a little aloof, you know. Uh, but they also have to be very careful because they have to convince their clients that their music is good. Now, music is very subjective. You need to be able to convince people that what you do is better than what your competition does. There are many instances like how the previous person was saying that getting a payment after something is done is very difficult, and this is very true in the music industry also. Now I had a incident a few years ago where I was doing some audio editing for some a Netflix job. Like there was a mediary company in between, and it was a translation thing, and they didn't have the budget to hire a different speech actor for every character, so they wanted me to edit their voices in such a way that one person can portray three people. So I did like a demo for one line for each character and got it approved, and then applied the same settings to the whole dialogue. But later on, they told me that they didn't like my work and they were only going to pay 40% of the price. Now, not liking the work is a very subjective thing. So you can't objectively prove what is wrong with it. And your client will say that I am not a musician, I'm not a music technical person in music. I cannot tell you what is wrong. It is just wrong. They will say that. They will also use certain words like it is too warm, it is too cold, which have no connection to music whatsoever. So, and you can't really argue with them because they are upfront that they don't know anything about it, and we are the professionals and we should know. And so they can say that you have not done a good job, and they are not going to pay you. So you need to be able to convince them that what you have done is the correct thing, is the right thing, and you deserve a full payment. So it is very difficult for a creative person to establish themselves in the industry. Also, there is a lot of competition from people who are already established who might perceive you as a threat. That has happened in the music industry so many times. I'm not going to take any names, but right from the beginning, even from before independence, this has been happening in the music industry. Uh, so you need to be very careful about that. Uh, on the other hand, you have the technical music professionals. Now, these people are like your sound engineers, which I am, mix engineer, your mastering engineer, your mic directors, uh, producers. Now, producers, they're crossover between like creative and technical. So they're kind of a hybrid. But then you have arrangers, and you also have like non-musical people who work in the music industry, like managers, booking agents. You have technicians, road crew. You know, these are the people who get things done. The creative people have the vision, and these are the people who create turn that vision into a finished product. So now these jobs are a lot more stable than the creative ones because pressing a button is pressing a button, cutting a frequency is cutting a frequency. These are very specific things which these people are doing, and so they don't have to prove that what they've done is correct or wrong. So and since these are the people who are not on the cover of the album, they are not under the limelight so much. So it is a very powerful yet a very stable side of things to get into. This is one of the main reasons why I perform as a hobby, but I produce as a professional. You know, and it's not just music. It can be even just small bits. Like you can be making the other day, actually, I was making a startup tone for a drone company. Like when the drone starts, it has to produce 3 notes. It's just 3 notes, but I will be getting a royalty for every drone which is being sold for just those 3 notes. So these are the things which the technical side does. They take the vision of the creative people and they put out a finished product based on that. Now let's talk about for you to start producing any sort of music, what do you require? Well, you actually don't require anything extra or from what you already have. You might be having a computer at home and you might be having a pair of headphone or a pair of speakers. That is all you need to get started. You can get a piece of software for your computer. Now I've listed out a few softwares over here. These are digital audio workstations. These are basically where you create all your music in. These have all the functions of record and edit and even compose. So Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton Live, Cubase, Studio One, Reaper, Audacity. These are all some popular digital audio workstations out there. A few of you might already be familiar with one or two of these. Now, Audacity is free. It has limited functionality. It is generally used by YouTubers and people like that who don't require a lot of editing. This is good for like just recording 1 or 2 tracks of audio and doing very basic cutting and pasting. It is free of charge, so you can try it out. Reaper is another one, which is a full-fledged digital audio workstation. It is, however, you need to put some time to learn everything about it. It is not very easy to use, but it is free to evaluate for 40 days, and then you require to buy a license, which is very cheap. Uh, my personal favorite is Logic, which I use, but you require an Apple computer for that. But for a very reasonable price, it gives you literally everything. You do not need to buy anything extra when you have Logic. It gives you all your digital instruments. It is included in the package. Its audio engine is very good. It sounds very good, and that's why it's my favorite. And then finally we have sorry, before Pro Tools, let me talk about Ableton Live. Ableton Live is very popular among the electronic music producers because it has inbuilt functionalities for sampling, and it has two very powerful synthesizers inbuilt into it. That is why it is very popular with the electronic crowd. And then there's Pro Tools, which is popular with the film crowd. It is the most expensive of them all, but it also has the largest amount of functionality, and more importantly, it can handle the most amount of tracks at the same time. So in film, where you have dialogues from 30 characters, and then you have short pieces, but you have about 300 of them, one after the other. This is where Pro Tools comes in because it can handle all of that audio very beautifully. It can run directly from the RAM, so it is very fast in whatever it does. And it was pretty much the door of choice for nearly 20 years, from the late 90s when digital music started until the early 2010s. And after 2000, after like maybe 2013 is when the other companies started catching up and including more and more features in their doors. And so now it is not as popular as it used to be, but in many places it is still exclusively used. So if you want to work in a professional studio as a sound engineer, Pro Tools is the thing you need to learn. They have their own certification courses called Pro Tools 101, 102, and all the way up till say I think 110. And yeah, so this is what you need to learn. First, you start off with a simpler one, uh, possibly a free one. See if you have aptitude for it. See if you like it. See if you are interested in it, and then you can move on to something like Pro Tools when you have some experience. Okay. Then there is like one very important tool in your arsenal which I need to talk about, and that is Midi. Now, Midi is the interface which you use to uh, program your music in the computer. Okay, it's like a graph, and on the y-axis you have your notes, and you have the time on the x-axis, and you need to plot the notes in relationship to the time. So when you plot those notes, you can give them like different parameters, like how long it is supposed to be, or what is the velocity which determines the loudness of the note, and all that you can set over there. And once you have made it, when you hit play, the computer will play back what you have set for you. You can assign an instrument to it, and you can change it on the fly. So if you have written a piece of melody and you want to listen to it on different instruments, you can simply load it as a MIDI track, and you can assign different instruments to it and then check what sounds the best. This is the most important tool which a musician can have, and I cannot stress it enough how important it is to learn about MIDI properly. It is a very powerful tool. Um, what I'm saying is a very basic overview of it. There is a lot of depth to it. And in fact, let's watch a small video which explains where it came from and how it evolved and what it is used for. Is it not playing?
Sir, sorry to interrupt, but it's not audible.
It's not audible.
No, sir.
Uh,
No sound.
no sound came. I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that. Maybe I can share the link in the chat box.
Okay, fine, fine.
Yeah. Um. Anyway, so what MIDI does is it provides you with a platform in which you can program every single instrument which is going to be there in your song, apart from your vocals. So you can have one MIDI track doing the drums, one MIDI track doing the bass. That one bass track might be triggering three different instruments which are playing at the same time, which are layered on top of each other. Then there'll be a couple of instruments for the mids, like your piano and your synthesizer and your guitar. These will be there in the mids, and then there will be certain accompaniment like pads or stuff to create an atmosphere. So all these things are possible with a single human operating the machine and doing all the instruments at the same time. This is possible only because of MIDI, and you need to learn how to use it in your choice of digital audio workstation. It is slightly different for every workstation, but the basics are the same. The controls are the same. Only where they are placed and what they are called is different. So once you learn one, you can sort of sort of figure out how the other ones also work. Now, like I said, vocals are not possible with MIDI. For vocals, you need to uh, record actual audio into the computer. Now, audio is an electromechanical source of energy that needs to be converted into a digital signal. So you need something else along with what I already mentioned to do vocals. Now let's talk about these other little few extras which you can invest in. So the first thing you might want is a sound card or a sound interface. What you can see on the screen, these are this is a very basic and a very popular sound interface. Can you see my mouse on everyone on the screen over there? As I'm moving the mouse, can everyone see?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So where I'm pointing the mouse right now, this is where you plug a microphone into, and this knob over here, this is where you set the volume of the input volume of the microphone. This is where you set the volume of what you're listening to, like your headphones or your speakers. So this monitor basically means speakers, and there is an independent control for headphones. So both can be used at the same time. So you might give your headphones to the vocalist who is singing into the microphone, and you might use the monitor to listen to it yourself. So two people can be sitting at the same time. This is the backside of it. There's a USB connection for the computer, and these are the line outputs which are connected to the speakers. Okay, so this is a good basic interface. You plug your microphone into it. On the inside hole, you can plug in an instrument like a keyboard or a guitar. So you see the switch over here, line. When you are on line, you have line level instrument like a keyboard or synthesizer, and when you are on INST, you are using a instrument level instrument like a guitar or a bass guitar. So if you want to record audio along with MIDI, you require something like this. Now this is a very basic one. Uh, in professional studios, the microphone controls and the converter, which converts it from digital audio or analog signal to digital signal and back from digital signal to analog signal for listening back to it. is separate and they're contained within different units and they're very high quality. This one, nowadays, you can get a low-end studio quality sound sitting at home by using one of these, and these are not very expensive. This one probably costs around 15,000 rupees, which is less than what it would take to hire a professional studio for one day. Yash Raj Film Studio is about 3,500 rupees per hour. So this sort of revolutionized the home recording industry because it finally provided a decent quality sound without going into a studio. So it contributed to a big boom in the market in the early 2000s. If you can remember, you had the remix culture in India, and a lot of people were using things like these to make those songs. These people couldn't necessarily afford to hire a studio to put their ideas into practice. But when these came out, they were finally able to do things which they always dreamed of. So this is a very iconic piece of equipment, and it's in its third generation now. There have been three generations of it, and it have only been getting better and better. And nowadays, a lot of people think that it is that recording studios are not even required if you have a good sounding room and you have one of these. Another thing you might want is a decent microphone. Now, if you are on a budget, a dynamic microphone like a Shure SM58 would be ideal for you. It costs about 8,000 rupees and it is very rugged. It is said that you can deep fry the mic and it will still work. So, and it has in its frequency distribution, it has on the high mids, it has a little bump. So it stands out when it is played back with other music. So it is good as a vocal mic. It is often seen in live performances because it is so rugged and it cuts through the sound. However, in the studios, generally for vocals, you use a large diaphragm condenser mic because it is more detailed. It picks up more details. There is more clarity to the audio. There is more top end. It is brighter. So you have a budget large diaphragm condensers are like Rode NT1 and Audio Technica 82035. These cost around 35,000 rupees, but they sound much better than the cheap microphone, and they require external power to operate. So here you can see this 48 volt, which is written over there. If you have one of these microphones plugged into this interface, they will only work when this 48 volt button is pressed and it is providing power to the microphone. Okay, now let's assume that you have started making some music. You are still a beginner, but you have made some music and you want to put it out in the market. So how do you do it? So there are traditionally two main ways to do it. First is the record label. This is the old school way of doing it. A company sponsors the whole thing. They will get studio time. They'll hire studios for you. They'll get the staff. There will be engineers, composers, lyricists, arrangers, which will work on the audio section of things. There will be a manager who will manage uh, the artists, whether they are happy, what they need, if they need something else. That's what a manager will do. And there will be producers who will be overseeing the entire process. They won't typically give any creative input, but they are more of a managerial process for the audio people. And then they have the non-audio stuff also, like marketing people, publicists, and they and merchandising people who will make merchandise based on the song which is being made. So they will do everything for the artist. They will make a final product and they will publish the final product. The artists are paid a one-time fee, like a signing fee, and then they are entitled to a portion of the royalties which come every time that song is played somewhere. On the radio, if the song is played, they'll get a small amount out of that. Now, in India, you might have heard of T Series, Tips, HMV, Yashraj Films. These are few of the record labels in India. In India, it works slightly different from how it works abroad, because in India we have a very well established Bollywood industry, and in India the record labels are generally tied to the producers who make the movies. So Yashraj Films, for example, they make films and they publish music as well, and they probably have the best studio also in Bombay. So they sort of like jack of all trades. So it works slightly different. Uh, the big three record labels internationally are Universal, Sony, and Warner. And these labels have various sub labels under them, and they keep on buying these sub labels to increase their business. Um, so when you go by this way, since they are sponsoring everything, they also own whatever music you make. You only own the intellectual rights to it, but playback rights and performance rights are all held by the studio. So you need to take permission from the studio if you want to use your own music. Recently, with Taylor Swift, this problem had happened where she wasn't allowed to play her own songs in her concerts because of a clause in her contract with the studio, with the record label. So she had to basically re-record everything on her own if she wanted to play, and the case is still going on. So this is a very double-edged sword where you get an infrastructure to put your vision into practice, but you don't really own that product. The record label owns that product, and they get all the profits. You only get the royalties and a one-time fee, and you might even have restrictions on whether you can perform that music outside. Now, as a response to these problems with the record label, in the late 80s, early 90s, the independent music, or the indie music as they call it now, started coming out. So this was basically a group of people getting together with low quality equipment at the time. Now the equipment is much better. Low quality equipment at that time. They come together and they figure out how to make that music. Nowadays, it is much better. It is a 40-year-old industry, and so things have settled down now. Uh, but still, the artist has to sponsor the entire recording process. They have to also think about publicity, publishing, going on tour to support that music. It is you need to work a lot harder if you are going to be an independent artist. Uh, just managing all these things within a given frame of time is difficult. And when you are thinking about all these things, your creative acumen also takes a toll. You might not be able to give the same creative output as you can when you don't have to worry about these things. So that is like a major difference between the record label and the independent artist. But nowadays, using the equipment which I just showed earlier, um, you can you can cut down costs a lot. Like a studio, the best studio in Bombay costs 3,500 rupees an hour, while the worst studio in Bombay probably costs around 500 rupees an hour. So instead, by just using a computer and a piece of equipment which costs 15,000 rupees and a couple of microphones, you can basically record everything at home and then hire the recording studio only for the most important parts of the song, like maybe the vocals, and then you can mix that whole thing inside the computer using software, which is good enough now that it doesn't sound too digital or too harsh. And that's how you create that song or that piece of music. And then you have to publish it. So you have companies which are called aggregators. In India, OK Listen is the biggest one. Uh, then there is DistroKid, CD Baby, and a couple of other companies like this internationally. They will take a small fee and they will publish your song on all streaming platforms. If you want, for an extra fee, they can make the CDs or they can make records or cassettes. Mostly they don't offer unless you absolutely want them, because nobody listens to cassettes anymore. But this is what they do. So some of them even have merchandising streamlined into it, where they'll make t-shirts and mugs and hoodies and stuff like that to promote your songs. So these are called aggregators, and it is very important that you do some research on it and find out which one works the best for you. These aggregators will also take a small cut of all the income which is coming into you. So you better bear that in mind and see how much percentage they are taking. I've personally been using OK Listen, and they are very prompt and good to work with. So I would recommend that for other people. Now, once this has been published, still you need to get people to listen to that music. If people don't know that music, they are not going to, you're not going to make money if that music is not being played. And the best way right now to market anything is viral marketing. And you can have influencers. There are different varieties of influencers called like nano influencers, micro influencers, and all. So these are separated by how many followers they have. So what depending on your budget, you can have a nano influencer or a micro influencer do something with your song playing in the back, and then put a link to your song in the description. Like they can make a story which while singing your song, or they can make a reel while dancing to your song or something like that. You obviously have to pay for it, but it is much less than what you would do in like a traditional form of marketing, like if you put it in an ad or something. So this is how you would do it today. Now let's look at the figures. Now, independent artists keep all the profits they earn except for like that small percentage which the aggregator will take. So they'll keep the profits and the royalties. The total control over the music. Recently, you might have heard the Spotify problem, where there was a thing between Joe Rogan and what's his name, Neil Young, where Neil Young wanted Spotify to remove his music from Spotify because Joe Rogan was apparently spreading some misinformation. Now, along with uh, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell also wanted to remove her music from Spotify, but the record label owned her music, and so she could not remove it despite wanting to. And this is where you have the control problem with the record labels. Like, if you do not like where your music is being used, suppose it is being given to a license to some political party which you do not support, and they're using your music for their own promotion, and you don't like it, you can't do anything about it because you don't own that music. While an independent artist will own that music, and they have the right to say, I don't like this, please don't use my music in this. You know, so that is a very important point to note, which not a lot of people have the foresight of doing while they are making the music. So now this is per stream how much is being paid to the artist on different streaming platforms. Now, Tidal is not available in India. However, if you plan to release your music internationally, you can have it on Tidal. Tidal is owned by Beyonce. It is the only platform which you now Apple Music also does it, but this was originally the only platform which streamed music uncompressed, and so it sounds the best. It has the highest sound quality. Then comes Apple Music, which among the normal streaming services, the Apple Music is the one which pays the most. And so it would be a good idea for you to market your music in such a way that your listeners listen to it on Apple, because per stream you're getting more money out of Apple Music. But at the same time, you can't antagonize your listeners. So you can't force your listeners to listen to it on Apple Music. So you should be releasing your music on multiple platforms. The aggregators will do that for you. Most popular platform in India is Spotify. It doesn't pay much, and so it is important that you make the listener aware that they should rather listen to it on somewhere else. Um, so now that you know what you need to do, yeah, you can see that it is very easy to just sit at home and spare a small amount of time every day from your routine for music, and you can easily make some money out of it. It doesn't start making money immediately. You need to learn some things and you need to put yourself out there. You need to market yourself, but at the same time, you don't need to go to an office. You don't need to go work 9 to 5. You can have your own working hours, and you need to you get to express yourself in a way which you can't do in a regular job. So it is a music is a very nice way of making some extra money while uh, while expressing yourself uh, at the same time. So, in conclusion, I would say that even if it is not your prime source of income, it is a good idea to give it a thought, especially if you're interested in music. Learning an instrument does not take a lot of time, maybe 6 months with enough practice, maybe 1 hour of practice every day in 6 months, and you should be able to play an instrument which you like. And then after that, maybe 2 months of learning on software of your choice, and you should be ready to start making some music. I'm not going to say that in this much amount of time you'll make good music, but you'll start making music, and as you practice, you'll get much better at it. So why not keep it as a hobby and grow it a little bit, because we have the technology to do it now. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, this technology was not available. Now that we have this technology, we can all do it. And so why not give it a shot, you know? So that's what I have to say about it. Anyway, uh, that's where I'll end, and I'll be taking some questions now.
Hmm? Thank you, Kunal.
You're
Well
welcome.
done.
You're
Ah,
welcome.
Neelam madam, you can take 1 or 2 questions because we are due to next session. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, are
And there
there
was one query in the chat box.
Uh-huh.
What we have to do to be a vocalist and a rapper as a beginner?
Okay. Firstly, two very different things. Rapping is all about the flow. So you need to learn more rhythm to understand what that flow means. Nowadays, a very specific style of rapping called triplets, like flow like that is going. So for rapping, basic pitch and rhythm is more important. But if you want to be a proper vocalist, if you want to sing, then you need to go to a tutor and you need to learn how the notes work, how the scales work, how it relates to the harmony, and you need to practice a lot for both of them, like for rapping and for singing. You need to practice a lot, and it's easier if you record yourself while you're practicing. You don't need to have any special equipment. You can record yourself on the phone while you are practicing and listening back to it and seeing where you are making the mistake and working on that. You need to have a process when you practice. You can't just practice blindly. You shouldn't be practicing the wrong things. You shouldn't be practicing the mistake. Okay?
Just one more query is there. Can you tell how to release a record label, whom to approach, and is it too costly?
Okay. Release a record label. So making a record label. So I'm sorry. Do you want to know how to release on a record label, or do you want to know how to build a record label? Okay, I'll answer like both. Okay, because I know some people who have tried to make a record label also. So, firstly, if you want to release on a record label, there are people employed by the record label called A&R people. Okay, and the A&R, you need to approach the A&R department. You need to present to them a demo of your music. If they like it, they will push it to the further person in the record label. It is not costly for you. Record label is going to pay for all the costs for recording and for marketing and everything, but they will also own the music. They will pay you a fee, and they'll give you some royalties, and that's it. But you won't own that music, and they are free to use that music as they see fit. Now, if you want to make a record label, it's a different story altogether. You need to have a lot of capital, and firstly, you need to have a lot of connections. You need to have connections with like the studios around the city, wherever they're available, or you need to have a tie-up with some studio which will just work for you. You need a staff of technicians, you need engineers, you need mixing and mastering engineers, you need staff for publishing, you need staff for marketing, you need staff for A&R, which will basically act as a filter for what music comes into the record label. It's a big laborious process, and if you're just a beginner, I don't think you should be looking at making a record label. It takes crores and crores of rupees to make a record label. Anyone else?
Hmm.
What
Thank you,
is-
sir, for solving all the queries.
Huh,
That's it. There are no more such questions.
okay.
Oh, wow, the session was just beautiful and musical. So, on behalf of Career Guidance and Placement Cell, I would like to thank our eminent speaker, Mr. Kunal Dole. Thank
Thank
you
you for
so much.
having me.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your valuable information about career in music production. As we all love music, but were not aware properly about the career options available in music production. But now, after your valuable session, I'm sure all the participants gained the knowledge in detail. So thank you, sir, for your valuable time. I would also
You're
like to
welcome.
thank, yes, I would also like to thank our beloved principal ma'am, vice principal, convener, co-convener, all the teachers, members, volunteers, participants for attending and for your active participation throughout this session. And all the participants, please fill feedback form. The link is already shared in the chat box. So thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Sangeeta.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, should I stop the recording for this session? Neela ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Can I?
Yeah.